picture this, you're an electrician, right? But instead of heaving those monster cables through a packed attic, sweating buckets, you've got a little robot buddy giving you a hand.
Now, that's a future I think a lot of us would like to see.
Right. And it's not as far-fetched as it sounds. Today, we're diving into whether robots can actually solve the electrician shortage, which, let's face it, is a question on everyone's minds.
Yeah, it's a big one. And the really cool thing is we're looking at real-world attempts to figure this out, not just sci-fi dreaming. We've got some research out of Denmark. They're grappling with a major shortage of electricians, kind of like a lot of places.
Exactly. And it's not just some abstract future problem for them. It's hitting them now.
Yeah.
So we've got an article and a really in-depth report from a Danish electrician trade organization, TEKNIQ Arbejdsgiverne. Both are focused on how robots and automation could actually tackle the shortage head-on.
And it's pretty urgent when you look at the numbers. I mean, by 2030, Denmark's projected to be short 6,700 electricians. That's a big gap to fill.
6,700 electricians, wow. The article really brings that home, mentioning that over a third of Danish electrical companies, they've actually had to turn down work. Just couldn't handle it, not enough staff. That's a huge GE red flag. Something's got to give.
Absolutely, yeah. You can't just wish away a shortage like that. But what I found really interesting was how they approached it. Instead of freaking out or just accepting it, the unions and the employers actually got together.
Now, that's refreshing to hear. So often, it's, those groups are at odds, but here they are saying, all right, how do we make this work?
Exactly. They said, let's explore some solutions here, starting with robots.
Robots it is. But I got to ask, before everyone pictures C-3PO rewiring their house.
Right, huh?
What are we actually talking about here?
So it's important to remember this isn't about replacing human electricians entirely. It's about using robots and automation to help them work smarter, faster, safer. The research really hones in on that.
Okay, so break it down for us. What does that actually look like? What kind of tech are we talking about?
So one of the really surprising things the report found was that a lot of the tech they identified as helpful, it's already out there. It just hasn't been widely adopted in the industry.
Oh, interesting. So it's not about inventing some crazy new gadget, but using what we've got in new ways.
Exactly. For example, cable pulling. They found that's a prime candidate for automation.
Makes sense. I mean, yanking heavy cables all day, that's got to be brutal on your body.
It is. And while there are machines for large-scale cable pulling, think like massive construction projects, they're usually too big, too clunky for the everyday stuff most electricians deal with. There's a real need for something smaller, more adaptable.
So kind of a disconnect between the tech that's out there and what electricians actually need on the ground.
Yeah, and the research really tried to bridge that gap. They did a deep dive into electricians' daily routines, looked at 3 different companies, each specializing in something different: renovation, service, and new construction.
Smart move. Gets you insights from all different sides of the industry, so the findings are useful to way more electricians, not just a niche group. So we've got the need, we've got some tech already out there, but can it really make a difference? Like, can it actually put a dent in this electrician shortage? What did the research actually find?
Well, that's what's so interesting about this. Both the article and the report, they emphasize they weren't looking for, pie-in-the-sky solutions, just what's actually doable right now with the tech we've got. Practical stuff.
I like that. No point having some fancy prototype that will never see the light of day on a real job site.
Exactly. They even talk about the what they call the 80-20 rule, which is basically often if you automate just 20% of a task, you get 80% of the benefit. So think about that. What if that 20% was the hardest part physically, or the most time-consuming?
Oh, I see where you're going with this. That 80-20 rule, that makes a lot of sense, especially as electricians get older. Wear and tear on the body, or if they're prone to injuries, less strain means potentially longer careers, right?
Exactly. And it's not just about working longer, it's about working better. You're less fatigued, less pain. You can focus on the parts of the job that require more skill, more thinking.
Right, it's about making the job better, not just squeezing more hours out of people.
Yeah.
So less wear and tear, longer careers. What else did they find?
Well, they dug into a bunch of different tech, and one that they highlighted was exoskeletons.
Exoskeletons, like those support suits they're using in some factories now.
Yeah.
To reduce strain.
That's the one. And in this case, it wouldn't be about giving electricians super strength or anything, but just support, when they're doing those awkward overhead installations or hauling heavy equipment around.
Okay, so it's about taking what they already do
Mm-hmm.
and making it less physically demanding, safer. What about that cable pulling issue we were talking about? Any solutions for that?
Actually, yeah. One company in the study, they really grabbed onto that one, worked with the researchers to design a whole new type of cable pulling machine.
Oh, really?
Yeah. One that's specifically for those everyday tasks, something portable, easy to use, not these big clunky things that are out there now.
So instead of trying to wrangle a massive machine for a small job, something more practical, did they actually build it, this dream machine?
They're working on it. The report says they partnered up with a manufacturer to develop it, so it's actually in the works. But here's the cool part. The whole thing came about because the electricians and researchers were working together, brainstorming.
See, I was just going to ask about that. This wasn't just engineers coming in saying, we know best, here's your robot.
Not at all. And that's what led to some really outside-the-box thinking. Like the article mentions one electrician, he had this light bulb moment during the project.
Love those light bulb moments. What was his idea?
So he was saying how frustrating it is when wires get lost inside walls during construction.
Yeah.
Makes them a nightmare to trace later. His solution: tiny tracking chips embedded in the wires themselves.
Whoa, like a package you track online. That's brilliant. Suddenly, finding a misplaced wire is as easy as checking your phone. That's such a good example of how even something small, tech-wise, can completely change how a job gets done day to day. It's amazing what a difference a simple idea can make.
But this was just one guy, right? In one research project. So what's the takeaway for everyone else? Even if you're not an electrician, why does this matter?
You know, that's the beauty of a good case study. It reveals something universal. What this research shows is that the potential for using automation, it's not limited to just a handful of industries. We're talking about all sorts of jobs, all sorts of fields.
It's not about robots or taking over. It's about saying, hey, what if? Right. If a field as hands-on as electrical work can find ways to bring in robots, it makes you think, what about everything else? Where else could we be using technology to make work better, not to replace us, but to help us?
I like that challenge.
Yeah.
Humans and tech working together, not one against the other.
And that's a big takeaway from all this. This isn't just a story about robots and electricians. It's bigger than that. It's about the future of work.
It's about working smarter, not harder. Making jobs safer, not more dangerous. Freeing us up to actually use our brains, you know, the creativity, the problem solving, all the things that humans are really good at.
Couldn't agree more. Imagine jobs that are less about the tedious stuff, the risky stuff, and more about the things we find rewarding, the things that let us truly excel.
Now that's a future worth working towards. So to everyone listening, next time you're on the job or thinking about your work, ask yourself, what's the hidden potential here? What could I automate, even just a little bit, to make things a bit smoother, a bit safer, a bit more efficient? You might be surprised by what you come up with. And it's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing, and who knows, maybe those robots humming.